there were quite a few missing plugs or bungs made of teak that cover the screws that hold the teak decking down. Step one in the process of restoring those is to remove the screw.
Got lucky.
Then you take the correct size countersink and just go a little bit deeper. I don't want to go too deep. Most of these go into frames below, but not all of them. So I don't want to go through the plywood below. The reason for this countersinking is because most of the missing ones just became too thin over time after wear and tear or even a little sanding. So by going deeper with the screw, I have room for a new plug. It's a tedious process, but it's important to take your time and do it properly. In other words, don't do what I'm about to do. No, don't do this.
Oh, man. Oh, dang it. I didn't. I did.
There's not much I can do at this point other than get the broken head out and then glue in a plug on top of it. I could try to drill out what's left of the screw, but I'm just going to mangle that hole. I can get away with this in a few places on the deck. Some of you may have heard that the best way to trim these plugs is with a very sharp chisel. Well, I didn't have one handy that day, but I did have a pull saw that would cut them flush. I am scratching the deck a little bit here, but it's okay. It's all going to get sanded. Sometimes they come out real easy, especially when they're this short. This one just goes into the plywood. This plug is supposed to provide power for the port and starboard running lights. I suspect it's been letting in water, and I really don't want to have it set up that way, so I'm going to remove that. This particular screw was already broken off, so I had to drill into the head just to get the head out. On we go. I lost count of how many plugs I replaced that day. I think I got all the bad ones. There probably are some that look okay, but if you pick at them, they'll come right out. I'm going to leave those alone for now. I also addressed some loose sealant between the cap rail and the deck. This area in particular was letting in quite a bit of water. Here you see me using one of my favorite tools. It's called a 5-in-1 or painter's friend. It's a painting tool, but it is an excellent scraper. You can do all kinds of stuff with that, especially if you put a decent edge on it. Having decided to leave the pirate drag to Johnny Depp, I removed the extended bowsprit. Sometimes it's called a jib boom, although a jib boom can actually be something else. Now, before anybody gets mad at me, it's important to understand that I've heard from the fellow who built this boat and designed it as a cutter. He designed the sail plan. He did not have this thing on there. He had the topmast, but he didn't have this on there. He told me it would be a very good idea to get rid of it because it's not going to help the boat sail any better. It also added several feet to the overall length of the boat, which can be a liability in close quarters at a marina and such. Some places will charge you extra for those few feet. When I first saw the boat, I thought this was the kind of jib boom that could tip up, but it's not. It also will not slide back normally. There were a number of things holding it in place, including a double gammon iron. Anyhow, the thing is in good shape. It's a nice piece of spruce. I'm not going to discard it. I don't know what I can do with it, but somebody else might want it. You could actually make a good fixed bowsprit out of this. More pirate drag, the catheads. I didn't like these from the first, and I suspected they were hiding rot. I was correct. On both sides, these supports were hiding rotten wood. Not terrible, not rotten all the way through, but definitely annoying. Not something I want to happen again, which is another reason why I'm going to get rid of these things. This turned out to be quite a project. I tried initially to be surgical in my approach, carefully revealing the screws and backing them out. It's also nice teak, too. I didn't want to just cut it up or whatever at first. I gotta say that they were well made and well installed, even though I don't think they're right for the boat. These were not put on here by the guy who built the boat. Somebody did this later. After trying to back out some of these screws, I gave up and decided I was going to have to do some cutting.
No more Mr. Nice Guy. Because I have this pad here, I might be able to get away with cutting it without damaging the rail. Just cut through the bolts. And that'll get the top off. Then rather than try to undo that, I might just try to free it up from the deck. I kind of wanted to keep these here, mostly so I wouldn't be making more holes in the deck that have to be filled somehow, but I don't know, I might try drilling this out. I think there's a fastener on the other side, which is impossible to get at. These were obviously built and then bolted down to the deck. So let's see. Yeah, it looks like here we've got the end of the bolt. The head is on the other side. I might just cut this too. I really don't want to pull this block up yet. Maybe I shouldn't do this today with this rain coming, with 4 days of rain coming. But I got started, so I don't know. Gotta have a think on that. Well, I haven't had any luck really with this Phillips head screw. I don't have a long enough driver to get it on there and turn it. So I'm gonna start cutting soon. But first, I'm gonna look below and see if there's a nut on the end of this eye. Well, it is an eye bolt. There is a nut. And of course, it's in a place where I probably can't get a socket on it. Fun. Well, I can't really get in there, and it's coated with epoxy or something. And the bolt is 2 inches longer than it needs to be, so I'm gonna try to attack it from up top again.
I thought I might be able to back out the eye bolt from above. All I needed was an appropriate lever, or maybe an inappropriate lever. I tried a lot of things.
Wow. I don't know about this.
This was when I remembered that I had something in the van that might help. There was nothing left in the bucket that would work. Well, I succeeded only in twisting the eye. The threads didn't budge at all. So it was time to start cutting. I also did a little hacking with a chisel to reveal the more stubborn screws. And ultimately, I had to cut the heads off the eye bolts and drive them down through the deck. It was the only way to get them off.
Straight into the belch.
With all that stuff out of the way, I could finally get a good look at the rotten bits of wood. Port side was pretty bad, but not awful. It should be a simple matter to fill this in. But it's another reason to hate those catheads. Sometimes things are pretty easy, like driving out the bronze bushing that was the last thing holding the tiller onto the rudder. The tiller's pretty much done, and it's in the way, so I decided to remove it. I figured once I had the bushing out, I'd easily be able to haul on it and pull it right out of there. I was wrong. There are bronze plates on either side, and it's a really, really tight fit. It's coming. Slowly but surely. Come on. I did have a plan B that involved using the tackle for the main sheet and a piece of old rope. I thought I was very, very clever. Well, that didn't go too well. So I decided to move on to something else and come up with plan C later. And here we have the worm shoe. It was mounted right here between the lead and the hardware for the rudder, the bottom hinge. It's just a piece of wood that is put there to attract and appease the shipworms, and they certainly took advantage of that. But that's the intention. This is actually the top of it. They got in from below. There were just a few screws holding it on. I took them out. There's also the idea is that they eat this and then they get to this layer. There was a double layer. There's actually another layer that got just water damage of rubber under here. Some rubber under here. And they don't like to try to chew through that. So they stopped. And that's how that works. It's sacrificial. And there's one of them. Dead are you? I didn't have any cardboard handy to make a template for the new worm shoe, but I managed to make do with a few pieces of scrap paper. That's not funny. Then it was time to transfer the profile of the worm shoe onto the new stock, and also the holes, which you can see I made X's where the screw holes are. Just did a quick pilot at each screw point. This is just a pretty good clear 5/4 pine. I would realize later that I should have used better wood, something more rot resistant. I was thinking too much in terms of it being sacrificial, but I don't want it to rot before the worms can enjoy it, you know. After cutting it out, it was time to countersink. Wow, really? Then I applied a nice coat of primer. I took advantage of some warm, dry weather to touch up the varnish on the gaff and boom. They will both need to be thoroughly redone at some point, but I just wanted to cover the raw wood before winter. It was nice to do something easy and enjoyable like this. I had to get a little more drastic about removing the tiller, but this heavy duty come along did the trick. I was kind of amazed at how tight it was in there. I even had tried soaping it, but nothing worked until I rigged this guy. Even then, it came out very reluctantly.